Blue skies smiling at me. I came up to visit Yale as a potential place to go. We get up there that evening, and all of a sudden, I'm hearing music. And I said, what the heck is that? So we went outside, and it was the Spizzwinks.
I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and I went to a big public school. We, plenty of experience with fraternities and stuff like that in those big state schools out there. But when I got to Yale and just saw like 12 different singing groups, I didn't know what to make of it. But then somebody said, well, you gotta be in a singing group because that's spring break.
Bow 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 dim bow bow diggum bow bow dim bow bow diggum bow bow.
I had already been tipped off about the Spizzwinks because a girl from my high school who had graduated a year before me was dating a Spizzwink at Yale. I said, it sounds cool. She's like, trust me, they will be the group that you want to join. They're definitely the funniest. They're your kind of guys.
They sounded good, but they were really funny. And they were the funniest. They're the funniest group, and they're like some of the funniest people I'd ever seen. Period. Josh Molina was in the group a year above me. When I saw him during Rush, I thought that's the funniest person I've ever seen, and it still might be true.
We had like the most personality. We had the most humor. We had the best arrangements, and we were like the people called us the oddball geek group, which I proudly claimed as a good thing.
A lot of us were basically loners. We had excelled in school and didn't have a lot of friends, and then all of a sudden we were in a group where we had peers with things in common, and it became your entire social life.
I remember, so you get a chance to sort of meet the Spizzwinks and hear them sing and see that they can, they have this friendship with this other group who comes in and sings, and then you see some of the other nerds who are rushing the group with you, and whether or not, like, are you willing to stay 3 years in a singing group with these incredible nerds who are also rushing a singing group? And I was delighted to spend 3 years with those nerds.
I may be wrong, but
before the war, there had been the Whiffenpoofs. There were some other groups, but singing wasn't a big thing, except for the Glee Club. The Glee Club was where you did it.
Well, I got to Yale in the fall of 1941, and the first thing I did was to try to get into the freshman Glee Club. The second thing I did once I got into the freshman Glee Club was to get 7 other singers in the freshman Glee Club to put together an octet.
Life at Yale was very intense at that time. Freshmen, when we came in, we went right into colleges. We never lived in the old campus. The college was under pressure to get guys through so that they could get their 4 years in, and they had war years, at least 2 classes each year.
That's how you got into a singing group in those days, is you were known. They asked you rather than you trying out for it. It wasn't a question of having a choice of 5 or 6 groups to rush.
it was the very big Yale Quartet Contest. One quartet from each class would have a sing-off. And it was Woolsey, and Woolsey was jammed.
When that Spizzwink quartet, freshman year, tried out and won the quartet contest, there were 200 freshmen up in the front of Woolsey Hall, standing up and cheering.
On the Glee Club tours, there was always an opportunity to sneak in and sing a few songs for a party or something like that. The Spizzwinks were brash, and we would sit off in a corner, and when things sort of got a little quiet, we'd have a song and people would say, "Oh, sing us another one." Well, who can resist that?
It's hard to explain because now you hear it, and Bill Gardner, oh, those are nice. Before, the groups were doing stuff like Orally. I mean, it was just very, very straight, old-fashioned stuff. And he comes in and does these chordings, and that no one had ever heard before.
We always felt that we were doing more modern stuff, bebop and things like that.
The first time we ever went to Florida, which was like 53, 54, took us 26, 28 hours then because I-95 was not complete. So we had to go on some awful roads too. And then one year we wanted to have a beach party. You know, deep pit, fire, the whole bit. Only it rained like crazy. So we had our beach party, except that we did the fire in the bathtub. And we don't know why we never got asked back again.
I was attracted to the group because they were the funniest group and had, you know, winky humor. And I just thought that was such a prize. My goal when I was intromeister and, you know, running that, first of all, I just want to memorialize everything because it's good. Just like we have music that's memorialized, we should memorialize our intros.
There was a quartet called a Limburger sandwich, a cool glass of beer, a slice of raw onion, and you. And so the quartet would come out, the bass would usually sit in a chair, they would find some poor unsuspecting female in the audience to sit in his lap, and then he would proceed to drink the beer, take a bite of the Limburger cheese, eat the onion like an apple, and then try to kiss her, which was just, it had to be horrifying.
It's one of my primary memories of just like jumping up and down saying leaping, 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 and wondering like, I would not have pictured myself leaping like this, just like it being second nature to me in my senior year of high school. Like, why am I doing this all the time?
There was one that they did at a Rush dinner. I can't remember that. It was like Bazooka Popeye or something. It was like a completely ridiculous, nonsensical, like Bazooka Joe comic with Popeye in it or something. Like it made no sense at all, and it was the best thing that, like, you know, that I saw all year. That's what hooked me.
It did feel like it was just a rolling adventure at all times. Anything could happen, and guys, whatever, these 20-year-old guys, just so eager to impress each other and to do the worst possible thing they could imagine, which really wasn't so terrible in retrospect.
I came from a very small town in upstate New York, and when I was tapped to go into the Spizzwinks, we went for the dinner afterwards at Maury's, and I was overserved, and I walked out of Maury's, and I saw my first pair of Gucci loafers. I happened to be throwing up on them at the time.
I recall, to my everlasting shame, trying to pee on the leg of Charlie Rifkin in a Florida parking lot, but it was good training for him because he's now the ambassador to France.
We were driving along Interstate 80 in Pennsylvania. We were kind of all splayed out in the vehicle, and there were feet beside me on the engine housing of the car, and they were generally coming my way, and either I moved them aside or shifted my attention to the feet that were there and drove right off into the woods. They did still let me drive after that. We had a totaled van though. It was a memorable experience because after we drove into a swamp, and so there was water coming into the van, and I can remember everybody evacuating the van quickly and running into the woods to get rid of all the contraband that was on board.
I mentioned the early jamboree that they'd have at Dwight Hall. So my first junior year, I decided we would start with somewhere. And I remember a business manager saying, that's a stupid thing to do. You should not do that. But it turned out to be a brilliant move because the other group ended on this big crescendo, and we started very softly and did it. And there were like 2 seconds of silence afterwards, and then we got a standing ovation.
The 70s were a time when we were living in reaction to the social upheaval and the unrest on the Yale campus.
Those of us who had, been overly protected as children were suddenly finding a voice and saying, the Stepford wife kind of mentality has got to stop, and we've got to become more creative as individuals.
There was real serious concern, I think, given to the fact that there were people of our generation dying in Vietnam, and what were we doing with these frivolous activities on college campuses?
my feeling was that if you had talent in the group, showcase it. And fortunately in the Spizzwinks, Reed Taylor was one of the finest student guitarists, folk guitarists I'd ever met or heard. And he had a voice just like James Taylor. Having Reed in the group really allowed us to do a bunch of things that the kids wanted to hear, that our friends wanted to hear.
That was the year I rushed the Spizzwinks, was the year that Rick Westerfield pitched the Whiffs. And the previous year, he had completely revamped the Spizzwink repertoire with new songs that were, more intricate, more jazzy, more in the same way that Bill Gard sort of produced some songs that people then sang for the next 10 or 15 years. Westerfield sort of had the same impact on people of our era.
Before the school year starts, we went to Hyannisport to Justin Connolly's house, and we spent a lot of time rehearsing and a lot of time drinking. And then at night, Justin said, well, if you were up for it, we can try to sneak onto the Kennedy compound and swim in their pool. So that seemed like a great adventure, and so a number of us went and snuck onto the Kennedy compound. And they had an indoor pool, so we had to sneak inside. And then we swam a few laps and grabbed any souvenirs we could and left. So for my remaining 2 years at Yale, I had Rose Kennedy's swimming suit in my dorm room, as if that woman hadn't suffered enough.
One of the jokes in Avenue Q started as something that I kind of came up with a bunch of Spizzwinks and a bunch of my friends. The Bad Idea Bears. Yeah, everyone had like a trunk as their coffee table in our day. Mm-hmm. There were no actual coffee tables, but so there would be a trunk, and like the Bad Idea Bears, like would just be like the little snuggle fabric softener bears, like like there'd be like a bottle of beer, and they'd just be walking across the table, pushing it as, just have some more.
The nice thing about having a reunion every 5 years and a singing dinner every 2.5 years is that the same quartet of people that I've sung with for God knows how long will still get together and inflict our song on some poor audience that's trapped, which is great,
I think everyone may feel, I've talked to other people that feel this way, that like the group that they joined was sort of full of these heroes and amazing people, and then the group that they leave is kind of filled with these like schmucks, but it can't always be that way, right? It must be your perspective.
I do feel like that all of these singing groups, they really are just sort of a blip and they're gone. It's just kind of like this powerful moment for the participants, but maybe not for anybody else. Maybe there's nothing worth really remembering other than, for those 3 years that I was in that group, it just was the greatest, most important thing in the world to me. And I think to many of the other guys as well. It's just great, I think it addressed so many of our own nerdy insecurities and just made us feel powerful in a way that, nothing else did.
I don't think I was especially nostalgic for leaving Yale, because I just don't get that way, but I really did about the Spizzwinks because they were my best friends.
To me, at the reunions, the best part is when we all sing in the rotunda. It's totally disorganized and it's way too crowded and hot, but to have Spizzwinks of every generation singing songs from all the different years is really cool. And that's a kind of connection I think that becomes a new experience, because it's nothing like singing in the Spizzwinks. Meeting people from all the different years and singing songs that were important to them, and then songs that they'd never learned before but they picked up for the reunion, is its own alumni experience that's distinct from the group itself. So I'm not just sitting around going, oh, you remember when we drove down to Florida?
I would like to think that there's a sense of stewardship there. I think that there's a sense of that there is more than just the music. There is more than just the friendship. There is more than just the tradition.
One thing you realize is how darn lucky we all are to have the singing experience at Yale. It's really unique, and you ought to, give back.
It is something that shapes you in a way, and it's something that even when it seems like a hazy memory, you see those people again and it all comes back. You can say, I stood right here in the shoe, I was right here, and this was who was to my right and to my left.
We may own the tonight. But till the morning sun, you're mine, oh mine. Play the music low and sway to the rhythm of love. Play the music low and sway to the rhythm of love.